Hi, you're listening to Anonymous Stories, honest confessions without judgment. If you have a story of your own, you can share it with us anonymously. Enjoy listening. I found out my son wasn't mine when he was 12 years old. Not during a fight, not in some dramatic confession, not because someone wanted revenge. It came out by accident, the way the worst truths usually do. We were at the hospital. Routine blood work. Nothing serious. The doctor looked at the results for a long time, then asked, "Are you certain you're his biological father?" I laughed. Said something stupid like, "I was there when he was born." The doctor didn't smile. He started explaining genetics, blood types, statistics, margins of error. I stopped hearing him, because something inside me had already cracked. I walked out of that hospital feeling like the ground wasn't solid anymore. Like my entire life was built on something temporary, a set piece that could collapse at any second. 12 years. 12 years of waking up at night because he was crying. 12 years of teaching him how to ride a bike. Holding his hand when he was scared. Feeling proud when he called me Dad. And suddenly, one question that destroys everything. What if he isn't mine? I didn't tell my wife right away. I didn't tell anyone. I started looking at my son differently, and I hated myself for it. I searched his face for чужие черты, his walk, his expressions. Every time he laughed, a thought crept in. Who do you belong to? I ordered a DNA test in secret. At night, like a criminal. I remember my hands shaking when the results arrived. I read them over and over, as if the words might change. Probability of paternity, 0%. 0. Not unlikely. Not inconclusive. 0. I sat in the kitchen until sunrise, staring at the wall. No tears. No screaming. Just emptiness. The thoughts weren't about my wife. Not about betrayal. Not about who she slept with. The real fear was simpler and worse. What do I do with this child now? Because if he isn't mine, who am I to him? And if I leave, what does that make the last 12 years of my life? I wanted to hate my wife. To yell. To break things. But every time I looked at my son, the anger disappeared. He didn't ask for this. He didn't choose any of it. One night, he asked me, "Dad, why do you seem sad lately?" And in that moment, I realized I could destroy his world with one sentence. I told my wife later. She cried, apologized, said it was a mistake, that she didn't know, that she was scared to tell me. I listened and felt almost nothing, because the hardest question wasn't about her. It was about me. And here's the truth I finally reached. That child isn't mine by blood, but he is mine by choice, by sleepless nights, by fear, by responsibility, by love that doesn't disappear because of a test result. I stayed, not because I forgave, not because I forgot, but because I understood this. If I walk away, I won't be losing someone else's child. I'll be losing my son. And maybe the most human part of myself.
If there were a villain in this story, it would be easier. Easier to hate someone. Easier to walk away. Easier to close the door and not look back. But the hardest part is this. No one here is cruel. No one is trying to destroy anyone else. We're just people, doing our best, and hurting each other anyway. I love two men, and both of them are right in their own way. The first is my husband. We've been together for almost 10 years. He knows me better than anyone ever has. He's seen me exhausted, insecure, unfair, quiet, distant. He's seen me at my worst, and he stayed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just steadily. With him, life is safe, predictable, built on routines and shared history. We have a home, plans, private jokes that don't need explaining, memories that are stitched into everyday life. He's the kind of man you can grow old with. And then there's the second one. He came later, not like a storm, not like temptation, but like a quiet realization I had been ignoring for a long time. We met through work. Nothing romantic, nothing inappropriate, just conversations where I felt seen. With him, I wasn't a wife. I wasn't a role. I wasn't performing stability. I was just a woman again. He never promised me a future, never made grand declarations. He didn't try to win me over. He was simply honest, and that honesty broke something open in me. For a long time, I pretended nothing was happening. I told myself it was admiration, a harmless connection, something I could control. But feelings don't ask for permission. One day I realized that if I didn't hear from him, my chest felt tight. If we didn't talk, the world felt slightly off balance. And that's when fear arrived. Because I didn't want to choose. I didn't want to lose either of them. My husband had no idea. He trusted me, and that trust weighed heavier than suspicion ever could. The other man knew. He saw the hesitation in my eyes, the pauses, the way I tried to stay on the right side of things, while slowly tearing myself apart. One day he said quietly, "I don't want to be the reason you destroy your life." And in that moment, I knew he wasn't a villain either. He didn't pull me closer, didn't demand anything, didn't pressure me to leave. He just loved me, in the only way he knew how. I lived between them, caught between two versions of my life. One was stable, correct, familiar. The other was alive, honest, painfully real. And the worst part? Both were real. I tried to talk to my husband, not directly, in questions. In half sentences. "Are you happy?" "Of course," he said. "Aren't you?" And I couldn't answer. Because happiness isn't yes or no. It's a choice you make every day. And I was frozen between two choices. I didn't leave. But I didn't fully stay either. I lived inside a triangle where no one betrayed anyone openly, but everyone was slowly bleeding. Until one day I understood. This couldn't continue. Not because someone was wrong, but because everyone was hurting. I chose to let the second man go, not because I stopped loving him, but because I realized I couldn't live half a life. I told my husband I needed time. Not the whole truth, but enough to start changing something. And now I live with that choice. I don't know if it was the right one. I don't know what the future holds. I only know this. There are no villains in this story. Only people who loved as deeply as they could. And sometimes that still isn't enough to keep everyone whole. I realized I never loved my husband. I didn't wake up one day and suddenly realize I didn't love my husband. There was no moment of clarity, no dramatic argument, no affair that opened my eyes. It was slower than that, quieter, more terrifying. I just stopped feeling. We've been married for 11 years. From the outside, we look like a solid couple. No scandals, no chaos, no obvious cracks. People say things like, "You two are so calm together," as if calm is the same thing as love. I used to believe that too. I married him because he was good, reliable, kind in a steady, practical way. He never hurt me, never scared me, never made me feel small. He was safe, and at the time, that felt like enough. I told myself love wasn't supposed to be dramatic. That passion fades. That real relationships are built on respect, not fire. So when I didn't feel fireworks, I assumed I was being mature. But years passed, and something inside me never showed up. I never missed him when he was gone. I never felt that pull toward him across a room. I never felt that quiet excitement when he touched me. I thought maybe that's just how long-term relationships feel. Until one day I caught myself thinking something unbearable. If he left tomorrow, I would be fine. Not devastated. Not broken. Just fine. That thought scared me more than anything else. I started watching myself around him. The way I smiled automatically. The way I listened without really hearing. The way I gave affection because it was expected, not because I wanted to. I realized I had been performing love for years. Not lying. Convincing myself. He talks about the future sometimes. About growing old together. About trips we'll take. About a life he is genuinely excited to share with me. And I nod. And agree. And feel absolutely nothing. That's the cruelest part. He loves me. Not loudly. Not desperately. But deeply. He looks at me like I'm home. And I look at him like a responsibility. I've asked myself 1,000 times if this is my fault. If I'm broken. If I expect too much. I've read articles. Listened to podcasts. Talked myself into gratitude. Love is a choice, they say. Feelings come and go. But what if the feeling never came in the first place? I don't fantasize about other men. I don't crave chaos. I don't want to destroy my life. I just want to feel something real. And that makes me feel selfish, ungrateful, almost cruel. Because how do you leave a man who did nothing wrong? How do you tell someone, you were perfect, just not for me? Some nights I lie awake next to him, listening to his breathing, and I feel like a fraud. Because he deserves a woman who loves him fully. Not someone who stays out of habit, out of comfort, out of fear of regret. And I deserve a life that feels alive, not just acceptable. I haven't left, not yet. But the truth has settled in my chest like something heavy and final. I never loved my husband. I loved the idea of stability, the idea of safety, the idea of being chosen by a good man. And now I'm trapped between two unbearable choices. Stay and slowly disappear inside a life that feels empty. Or leave and become the villain in a story where no one did anything wrong. I don't know what I'll do. I only know this. Realizing you never loved someone isn't loud. It doesn't explode. It just quietly rewrites your entire past and leaves you staring at a future you're terrified to choose.
I never thought it was possible to live two lives at the same time. Not in theory, not in movies, but in reality. For years. So well that no one noticed. From the outside, my life looked perfect. A stable job, a family, a home, regular holidays, photos where everyone smiles. People saying things like, "You're lucky to have each other." I almost believed it myself. And then she appeared in my life, quietly, without drama. And everything started following a different script. We met by accident. There was no lightning bolt, no instant chemistry, no love at first sight. Just a conversation. Just an unexpected sense of understanding. Just a person next to whom breathing suddenly felt easier. I remember the exact moment I realized it was dangerous. Not when I started thinking about her, But when I caught myself hoping the conversation wouldn't end, we began texting. Carefully. Infrequently. No flirting. No confessions. I told myself it was harmless. That adults can talk. That I was in control. Self-deception is very convenient. Over time, her messages became part of my routine. A text in the morning. Short exchanges during the day. Long conversations at night. When the house was asleep, and I sat in the dark, feeling more alive than I had in years. I didn't complain about my marriage. I didn't portray myself as a victim. I didn't ask for sympathy. But with her, I didn't have to perform. I didn't have to be a husband, a provider, a role. I could just exist. And that was the beginning of the end. The first time we met in person, it was just to talk. Neutral place. Coffee. No touching. No words that couldn't be taken back. But the tension between us was impossible to ignore. We sat across from each other pretending this was normal, while every pause said more than any sentence could. When we said goodbye, I knew I had crossed a line. Not physically. Internally. From that moment on, my life split in two. One part was my home. Family dinners, responsibilities, routine conversations about the day. The other part was her silence, depth, truth. Our affair lasted for years. Without scenes. Without photos. Without promises. We never said, let's leave. Let's destroy everything. Let's tell the truth. We existed in a space where time felt suspended. Sometimes we wouldn't see each other for months. Sometimes we intentionally disappeared from each other's lives. As a test, to see if we could stop. We couldn't. Every return hurt more, and felt better. I hated myself for it. For the lies. For the double life. For looking into my family's eyes, knowing a part of me belonged to another woman. But I couldn't let her go. Because with her, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Meaning, we knew everything about each other, our fears, our weaknesses, the dreams that would never come true. She knew I would never leave. I knew she would never demand that I do. That made it even more unbearable. Sometimes I wondered if this was my real life, and everything else was just a role I had learned too well. But then I'd come home, hear familiar voices, see people who depended on me, and I understood that the choice had already been made, long ago. The affair ended quietly. No fight. No dramatic goodbye. One day she simply said, I can't live half a life anymore. I didn't try to stop her, because I knew that if I said even one word, I would destroy everything. We don't talk now. We don't text. We don't cross paths. From the outside, nothing in my life changed. But inside, there's an emptiness no one sees. Because the most painful thing about a secret affair isn't being exposed. It's returning to your normal life and pretending you didn't lose a love that no one will ever know existed.